Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing well. As you may have noticed, this is a bit different than my usual gaming content. But if you hadn't picked it up, I am somewhat of a Magic the Gathering fan, aficionado, enjoyer, anything in between. And my chosen gameplay, or game method with Magic the Gathering is the format known as Commander. But when I'm introducing friends, family, prospective players to the game, I find that Commander is often a daunting challenge for them to get into. It is a very complicated, strategic, and interwoven game mode to play. So I'm making this helpful guide to help out new players, people who are trying to get a better grasp on Commander and understand things a little bit better. Keep in mind, this is an unscripted take, so I do apologize for any idiosyncrasies, any minor errors, and general rambling, as I am going just, for a casual, me talking to you kind of approach. So, let's get into it. A good place to start is, well, what is Commander? Well, going into this video, there is a simple assumption that at the very least you know the basic rules of Magic the Gathering and you're coming from a background of standard play, at the very least. But Commander, how I described it, is when I first got into Magic the Gathering, Guilds of Ravnica was the first major set to have come out, and the box topper was Ariella, the war leader. And as some of you may know, Angels are what got me into this game. So I was super hyped to get my hands on Ariella, or a copy of Ariella. And I do apologize for the music in the background if it does change to a commercial. I am just going to work through it, but I am not paying for YouTube Premium, and this copyrighted music is the best I can do. Well, copyright-free music is the best I can do, so I do apologize for that. Yeah, so what is Commander? Yeah, so I wanted to get my hands on Ariella, but I could only really afford one copy of Ariella. And in a standard game, once that card's gone, it's gone, under normal circumstances, leaving aside certain other card interactions. But Commander flips that concept on its head, where you have one card that is the leader of your deck, that exemplifies your deck. One card that no matter how many times it's killed within the course of a game, you can play it multiple times and have it on the battlefield. And that's what really drew me to Commander in the first place, being able to have my favorite angel. Most of the time it's Avacyn or Ariella or Kalia, as you see on the screen right now, was a favorite commander of mine for a while. But have the ability to have a specific theme reoccur, a specific creature I could play again and again and again. We will get into specific rules for how exactly the commanders play, but that is the general overture of what a commander is. Okay, moving on. So general rules of the game. Well, some of the main differences that immediately spring to mind is in standard, you have a 60 card deck with 4 copies of each card in the deck. Well, a maximum of 4 copies, I should say. Commander is a little bit different when you have 100 cards with only 1 copy of each card in the deck. So it's a lot more moving pieces and a lot different to think upon. So I stress a lot of this is down to your playgroup. Playgroups sometimes have different house rules, so definitely make sure to discuss with the people you're playing with to see what exactly they think about, certain rules. But how it's always worked with me in my playgroup is we usually roll a dice to decide who goes first, and then to start the game, you draw your 7 cards and you go from there. In essence, it does work fairly similar to a standard game, except the commander rules itself, which we will discuss later in the video. Okay, one of the most important questions that I get from friends and people who are getting into Commander is how do I deck build? There's 100 cards here. I don't know what I'm doing. there is just too much to keep track of, and that is completely understandable. It is very daunting to get into the first time around. So, I stress going into this, but that your deck list is highly dependent on the commander you play. Your commander sets the tone your deck follows. You could have a more fast-paced commander. You could have a more slow-paced commander. You could have somewhere in between. And that will determine exactly what cards you use. This general breakdown is a generalist look at a deck building, okay? Think of it as your skeleton where you can make, modify, and change things out a little bit, but just to give somebody a bog standard deck list that will be able to, at the very least, function in most situations is what I'm hoping to do here. So, let's get into it. So, for your mana base, mana, it's how you play the game. It's pretty important. I have generally found that 30 to 35 lands will do the trick. You can have higher, you can have lower. In a fast-paced Spellslinger deck, I've run downwards of 28. In a mono-green ramp deck, I've run upwards of 40. It really depends on your playstyle, your commander, and what you're hoping to do. Also, make sure to run your utility lands and lands that can help you make a difference. But for mana itself, 30 to 35 lands, I think personally is a good start. Okay? So 3 to 5 Wraths. Okay, what do I mean by Wraths? Wraths is a colloquial term that Commander players, and I don't know if it's in the rest of the game modes. I assume it is, but I'll stick with just Commander for the moment. Is what is referred to as a board wipe. Things that completely remove a certain type of card from the board, or all types of cards from the board. Your Blasphemous Axe, your Wrath of God, your Damnations, things that, in a way, reset the board state. With 4 different people in a commander game, each pursuing their own agendas and having their own tools out to win the game on the field, it can get pretty cluttered and pretty threatening very fast, especially if you are unlucky enough to be behind on the board. Wraths are a great way to reset things, equalize the board, and get yourself back into the game. Okay, I cannot count how many times I have been brought back into the game by a lucky top deck of a Wrath and gone on to win the game. So definitely a auto include in most decks. If you're playing a more control heavy deck, Wraths might be 5 Wraths, maybe even 6 Wraths might be applicable, but if you're playing a different kind, maybe 3, maybe 2. That's up to you, but again, this is my general recommendations. Okay, well, what is a heavy aspect of Commander? Drawing cards. You have 100 cards to get through. Draw, 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 draw. It is I shouldn't say my favorite part of the game. It is most people's favorite part of the game. Drawing cards. Commander, in a way, can be summed up by who can draw their resources the fastest. So obviously, this is different for different commanders and different colors, blue being the master of drawing cards, but most colors and most decks in some way have the ability to draw cards, whether this be instant sorceries, artifacts, enchantments. So when building deck, I do apologize, my English skills are not the highest today. When building a deck, be sure to consider things to help you draw through your deck quickly. Mana rocks. Okay, what do I mean by mana rocks? Well, your arcane signets, your soul rings, your Felwar stones, things, generally artifacts, that help you advance your game states. Think of it like this. On turn 2, you put down an arcane signet, and then it comes back around to your turn, you put down another mana. You have 4 mana on turn 3, whereas if you didn't have the mana rock, you would only have 3 mana. So it's a good way to help you advance your game a little bit faster than your competitors if they weren't running mana rocks. So when going into a game, it is definitely good to consider putting at least a Arcane Signet, a Soul Ring, and a Commander Sphere at minimum into your deck. I have found that that has been a quite reliable way to help ensure that I have the mana I'm looking for. Alright, ramp. What do I mean by ramp? Well, in a similar vein, ramp is like mana rocks. It's any spells that increase your mana count either temporarily or permanently. Things to go find lands in your deck, things to give you temporary mana, so on and so forth. I put 0 through 5 on here because ramp sometimes can be color specific. Black and red are not going to have the same amount or the same type of ramp as green, but they still do have their options through artifacts and through certain land manipulation. So definitely something to keep in mind, but like I said, anything to help advance your game plan quicker should definitely be considered as an auto include into your deck. It will be easier for some colors than others, but it's something to definitely keep in mind. Okay, so obviously this entirely depends on your deck type. I've known certain commander decks to not run any creatures, but if you generally speaking, you're going to want to have some blockers up, or at least some gimmick to make blockers, or creatures are your win con. You know, they're exactly what causes the damage at the base level to kill your opponents. So, considering your commander, okay, generally anywhere from 15 to 25 creatures I found is a good number. Alright. And then 0 to 20 win cons / interactions. Well, to fill out the rest of your deck, generally is interaction cards, as I would call them. Instants and sorceries, you know, kill spells, tutors, things that help you win the game. So that's going to be your best way to manipulate the game, is what cards go in there. And again, I'm trying to be fairly general, but I think more or less you understand my idea. Okay, let's talk about the mana base a little bit more in depth. Well, obviously, we talked about exactly how many lands that you should include in the deck, 30 to 35 generally, but it depends. But one of the major problems in Commander is what I would call getting mana screwed, okay? Normally, that can be too much mana, too little mana, but in Commander, you need specific colors to cast your Commander, okay? And if you don't get those colors, let's say you're playing a triple color deck with white, red, and black, if you just never draw any sources of black mana, well, you know, casting your Commander, that's what you're here to do, might be a little bit more challenging. So getting a varied mana base is helpful to ensure that you can actually play the game, and isn't that what we're all here for? So running things like fetch lands to go find the mana you need, so terramorphic expanses, evolving wilds, exotic orchards, those are great for mana fixing to ensure you always have the color you need. I also brought up utility lands, things that you could sack to draw cards, things that you can cycle, multicolored lands, you know, if you have deep enough pockets, you know, lands that produce any color mana. Things just to make sure that you have the mana that you need to successfully play the game. So having a solid mana base is critical in Commander, and yes. Okay, yeah, so talking a little bit more about Wrath, delving deeper. In my opinion, almost an auto-include in most decks. I have seen many games where the difference between winning and losing is a wipe of the board, and the table's arch enemy immediately is knocked down by a well-placed Wrath of God, Blasphemous Act, Supreme Verdict. Definitely do your research into your Wraths. Most, if not all, colors will have them. And yes, a very, very critical part of the game. It depends on your commander how much you should include. If I'm running a control heavy deck, I might consider running more. If I'm running a more aggro themed deck or a more combo themed deck, I might consider running less. That's up to you as the player, but we are just discussing here for now general topics, so that would be Wraths. Card draw, card draw, card draw. That is the heart and soul of Commander, you know? You got to get the resources out of your deck to play them, and oftentimes whoever can draw the most cards will have the higher chance of winning the game in the end. You know, certain colors do this better than others. You know, blue being first and foremost the card draw color, but black, red, green, and white have their own ways for drawing cards generally. It does depend on your budget. Some options are more budget friendly than others. I do apologize if you heard some beeping there in the background. My phone is charging on my computer right now, so it was flicking on and off with the connection. So, but some colors, you know, they'll have better options than others, but it does depend budget friendly or not. Your heuristic studies, that's always the quintessential commander option for card draw, but you know, your impulse draws, your cathartic reunions, your faithless looting, you know, one of my favorite, you know, token strategies in green is shamanic revelation, draw a card for each creature you control. So card draw, card draw, card draw. Definitely make sure you have card draw options when you are playing commanders. Ramp. Alright, well, having more resources faster. That is ramp. You know, getting lands from your deck out onto the battlefield so that, well, at the end of the day, you can play more crap. Excuse my language. Ramp is very important in a commander game, and if you ever graduate onto playing more competitive tier games, you know, the faster the mana you can get, the better. You know, if I can play my commander on turn 3 where my opponent can play it on turn 4, you know, that can make all the difference. Green in specific is the color for ramp, just like blue is the card draw color, green is the ramp color. Okay, it is one of, if not the most easiest to find your mana and get it out of your deck onto the battlefield as fast as possible. But to some extent, the other colors have options for this. I'd say definitely would white have the second best? Because I don't think there's any blue or notable blue ramp. Black does have some, and red also does have some. But I would say green and white are your best options when it comes to ramp. But just like card draw is critical to get your resources, you gotta have the resources to play them. So definitely consider ramp very heavily when designing a commander deck. Alright, and as discussed previously, this will be a breakdown of the exact rules of the commander itself. You know, it's a very important part of the game, very critical, one might say, to understand how that works. So your commander is not a part of your deck. It is placed in something called the command zone, okay? The command zone is where your commander will sit, and it can be played, you know, for its mana cost to the battlefield from the command zone. But when it is killed, instead of letting it go to the graveyard, you can return it to the command zone to be played again with a 2 mana tax every time your commander is replayed. So if it's died once, it costs 2 more, twice, 4 more, thrice, 6 more, and so on and so forth. So that is the main draw of the game, at least for me. The ability to take a cool creature that I like to build around and have the ability to have it stay on the battlefield for the whole game and not just, you know, get pitched to the graveyard and that's that. So that in specific is how the commanders work. You can still let them go to the graveyard if you have any special way to get them out. Commanders cannot be exiled or, you know, killed permanently. You essentially have the option to, you know, if a Swords to Plowshares would be cast on your Thrakus the Butcher as your commander, you have the option to let it go into exile. I don't know why you would, or return it to the command zone. So there's that constant, presence from your deck's theme almost with the commander. So. Well, thank you all very much for tuning in. I hope you guys like this, changing content. I'm definitely down to doing some more guide type videos in the future. Talking about Magic, talking about other, I'm a history nerd. I talk about history things too. So let me know what you think down in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.